It was a slow day for news at Rolling Stone, so one of their journalists decided to defame a YouTuber. He goes by Star Wars Theory. He's got like 3.5 million subscribers. They defamed this man and said that he claims women don't belong in Star Wars. He doesn't think that they belong in Star Wars movies or in the Star Wars fandom. And essentially, girls have cooties and ew. And we can defame nerds for this reason. Here's the title. His guest said women don't like Star Wars. He agreed and sparked an internet debate. Popular streamer Star Wars Theory has brought back a familiar, if unwelcome, internet discourse. And here's the reality of what happened. He has a separate channel where he does podcasts, and he had a psychologist on named Sadia Khan, and she talks a lot about dating and relationship coaching and stuff like that. And she basically said that there's no reason for this push for women to be the center of stories in male-dominated fandoms.
There's a $20 one here from Joe Watland. Says, so technology is making generations smaller as time goes on. I just got to get this. I got to get this straight in my own head. Yeah. Sorry to bother you. I love watching you guys do your thing. I get like
yes, the faster that technology changes, the more different experiences will be between generations. That's why you have to keep slicing them into smaller and smaller portions, I guess. So here is her direct quote. She derided Hollywood directors for centering female stories within male-dominated fandoms. It's not outlandish to claim that Star Wars has a male-dominated fandom. And here's her quote. Do we need more women in Star Wars? No, we don't. And women don't even watch Star Wars. They don't even care about it. It's a man's little thing. Let him have it. So she's putting down Star Wars. She's not a fan of it. Also, she lives in the Middle East. So it's not like she would even have that much exposure
Is that where
to Western entertainment. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know
or she's
that.
At least she's from there.
She's all over Instagram. Like her, like she's all over. Like she's one.
And she's not talking about pop culture.
No,
she
never.
talks about
relationships,
dating, relationships, and psychology and stuff like that. So this is not her wheelhouse at all. But she's speaking in generalizations. And what I realized is that people below a certain IQ are not able to think in abstractions. They have to point out the anecdotal evidence. They have to point out that one minority out there who is the exception to the rule, because it really stifles conversation. And that's the entire reason that this whole scandal broke out. And a female Star Wars fan named Olivia, who is 16 years old, decided to use this audio from the interview in a TikTok of hers to clap back at this sentiment.
Do we need more women in Star Wars? No, we don't. No one. Women don't even watch Star Wars, but they don't even care about it. It's a man's little thing. Let them have it. But they want to be like, oh, there's such a deprivation. We got to be in it so they can be a mini hero. When you don't have anything outside of your gender as a way of being proud of yourself, you use your gender as a shortcut for entitlement and heroic stances. Do we need
So here are all of these cringy videos of me at Star Wars Celebration, and I'm female and I'm a fan of Star Wars. So that totally debunks the claim that most Star Wars fans are male. Yeah. And the most ridiculous part of this article is that they're claiming he agreed with the guest. I went back and I looked at the episode, and he only sat there listening to what she said. He smiled and face-palmed. He probably didn't agree with what she said, but he didn't chime in to disagree with her. So they interpreted that as him agreeing with her and being a misogynist Star Wars fan.
There's this, I don't know if this is the one that they always link to, but this is in Star Wars fans as of 2019 by gender. So 2019, depending on when it came out, would have been around the time The Rise of Skywalker either came out or
trilogy.
So right here you get avid fan. 32% of men say they are avid fans. 18% of women. 38% of men say they are casual fans. 33% of women say they are not a fan. 30% of men say they are not a fan, and then women, a whopping 49%, say they are not a fan. Whether any of the, like, I don't like using statistics as an argument most of the time anyways, because like a good company that, you know, authors a study or wants to get the result that they want to get, like depending on sample size, where they get their data from, who they pull. Like, I just find that most of the time common sense is better than, you know, dubious statistics, unless you're going from like Pew Research has done a lot of great work with statistics, but most of the time, you know, people always talk about this, like with the science, like they can get the outcome that they want, you know, if they want. In this case, you know, just thought I would share this.
Well, if the statistics are changing, if more women are saying that they like Star Wars and less men are saying that they like Star Wars, it's only because they're alienating the original fan base, which was male dominated. It doesn't say much about how well their push for diversity is working for them. And the proof is in the numbers. Like, are these movies successively making more and more money? I don't think that would bear out if we looked at the numbers. So they said, this isn't the first time the Star Wars fandom has dealt with disagreements surrounding racism and sexism within their own ranks.
Which wasn't the point of his discussion with her either.
And he brought up this issue because of the recent comments by the Rey solo film director, Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, saying that it's about time a woman shapes the Star Wars universe and that she enjoys making men feel uncomfortable. And that just sounds really bad on the surface level.
Look, to point out that she wasn't, that was not in the context of like a Star Wars discussion, that specific quote. But the point is when that's on the record at all, it makes people think that you're dubious.
Right. Yeah. If you look at his reaction, though, he's made a response video to Rolling Stone, by the way, and he said, if you can find a clip of me where I'm saying that women don't belong in Star Wars, either they don't belong in the fan base or they don't belong in the movies, I will pay you $10,000 because that clip doesn't exist. And in his response video, he said, yeah, I know that women like Star Wars and that there are plenty of women in Star Wars fandoms, and
he said, why didn't people have a problem with Ahsoka? Why didn't people have a problem with the idea of Patty Jenkins directing Rogue Squadron? Why don't people have a problem with Bryce Dallas Howard directing episodes of The Mandalorian? Why don't people have a problem with that? Because the argument they're making is bullshit. And it's stupid. It's also, I do think it does speak to this larger issue now. Like, when you do a show like this, or when you do a show like what he was doing, his podcast where he's talking to this person, you're speaking in theoretical terms. I think this is one of the big problems with political discussions in these realms, right? Is that you're always speaking to theoretical ideas that impact a large swaths of people. But most people don't interpret data that way. They're interpreting it in an anecdotal fashion. So there's an automatic and very large divide between how these types of discussions are perceived and how they're conveyed. And like you said, above and below a certain, look, I'm a dummy, and I can understand the idea that back in the day, but now it is literally the thing where it's like, when you say I like apples, somebody's like, oh, so you hate oranges then? And as trite as that example is, it's really honest to what the internet is like.
Right. It's the internet lowering people's intelligence, because you could, come on the internet and say Asian men are shorter on average, and someone will reply to you and say, hey, there's this one Asian guy that I know who's 6'5", so you're wrong. And it's just like an IQ thing. It's like, how would you feel if you didn't have breakfast this morning? And they'd be like, but I did have breakfast this morning.
I just think that like there's a divide there with how they interpret information. Like, most people use their life experience and the anecdotal evidence to understand the world. So
they're like, this is creating an echo. Yeah. Like, they cannot be reached. It is. You could snap your fingers in front of their face. They're not present.
There's a $20 one here from the Undertaker. Says, people love to point to things like Star Wars and say they're male dominated as if that's a bad thing. Men dominate a lot of things, but the ladies are sharp enough to want the ones which don't involve a risk to life and limb. Well, yeah, and then I love when they make the videos where it's like they go to like the man on the street interviews to asking women like, do we need men? And they're like, no, we don't need men. And
it's always
like overlaid overlaid with clips of men on oil rigs and like doing all of the hard jobs that, you know, society dictates men to do because it just wouldn't be possible for women en masse to do them. Again, that doesn't mean there isn't the 1 or 2 women on the oil rig. Right?
There's
but
no
that's
push
the exception
for,
and not the rule.
You know, men to star in, I don't know, chick flicks, right?
I mean, women like stories about romance, so even with chick flicks, men play a pivotal role in those movies.
They do.
Yeah. There's a $20 one here from Not That John Stewart. Says, Kathleen Kennedy, he's yelling, by the way. I'm not going to yell, but he says, Kathleen Kennedy has been ruining Star Wars since Disney bought it. How much more female can it get? Sorry, rant over. Please continue.
Also, you said that this YouTuber Star Wars Theory kind of stays out of the culture war topics.
Maybe it's different now.
Most of the time.
I didn't. I mean, it seemed like the way he was phrasing it, like he didn't have any desire
it sounds
to get
like
into it.
This is the type of person who never wanted to get involved in these kinds of debates, but the culture is just getting so insane that you're kind of forced to reckon with it.
Yep, it's stupid.
Like, you know, he makes content all about Star Wars and keeping up with news about new projects and stuff. And when this director comes out and says that she enjoys making men feel uncomfortable and that women need to start shaping the Star Wars universe, like, he has no choice but to address it. And if you're not all the way like shilling for Disney Star Wars and everything they do and every decision they make, then you become, you know, you get cast on one side of the culture war debate.
Sketch Therapy says he used to, but they tried to put him in a corner. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. They'll label you, and then you're forced. He, like, even when he made the video about Rolling Stone, he's like, I don't want to do this. This is stupid. Like, he doesn't want to get involved and do this, and I get that. Like, especially if you're like into something that you really, really love, and you're not somebody that's talking about the ins and the outs of the kind of more dramatic sides of these industries, I can understand that there's probably a lot of emotional peace that comes with that, and not wanting to have to get into these debates. I find most of these debates that we have to get into on the channel, I do find it tiresome, and I do find it draining. And if you've got a channel that's as successful as his is, that's not based around that, why would you want to court that type of discussion? It doesn't make any sense. But they're not allowing him to stay out of it.
If you're looking for some female input on what the meaning of Star Wars is, here's one tweet. Anakin Skywalker's story is a cautionary tale of what can happen if someone goes down the path of controlling and abusive behavior, and toxic diehard fans that idolize and act like Darth Vader are a slap in the face to George Lucas. George Lucas, you mean the one who hated the sequel trilogy? Yeah. That George Lucas? Okay, just checking, yeah. Here were some other takes. One said, thank you, Rolling Stone, for pointing out that he agreed with her statement. The biggest Star Wars creator agreeing that women are not real fans and posting that to his platform of 3 million people. Stop supporting the people responsible for the destruction of this community.
Here's
our community.
One of my biggest problems is that word right there.
Everything has to be a community. Everything you go through has to be a journey. People just think and speak in buzzwords now. And if this woman went back and looked at the podcast, it only has 28,000 views. I guarantee not all of the people getting angry about this went and looked at the content. You would see that all he did was sit there and scoff at what she said. And I really don't think he was responsible for debunking her. She's not into Star Wars.
Yeah, the rest of the discussion, it's clear that she didn't really have any knowledge of Star Wars outside of what he kind of led to her, which was the point about, like, it's kind of being pushed for women now, and that's accurate. It's not wrong. She's making a broad generalization.
She kind of just pointed out that victimhood is currency these days, and people feel empowered if they can frame themselves as victims because, you know, if you're not facing any real adversity in life, especially in the West where we're so comfortable, you have to make up an adversity to feel alive.
In the chat, Rhaegar Targaryen says, I love my pop culture crisis community. Please don't call it
community.
Please don't call it a community.
Our fuzzy wuzzy community.
I don't want to be a community.
I
don't want to be a community. I hate that word.
Just because you like Star Wars and Joe Schmo 32 also likes Star Wars, it doesn't mean that you belong to the same community. You consume the same media.
Yep.
There's nothing deep about it. Disparu said, the truth is unwelcome and reality is misogynistic. Disney will get 50-50 viewership in the end, though. All the guys will leave.
Yeah. And the men that will be left will not be the ones that spent all the money on it back in the late 70s and early 80s.
And also, Anna, that Star Wars girl, chimed in because, I mean, obviously she has to.
Makes perfect sense.
She said, as a woman, she's right that most women typically don't like Star Wars, but that doesn't mean all. It's obvious she herself isn't a fan, so her generalization is one of a normie. Aside from that, everything else she said, from what I saw, was spot on. The victim narrative is a thing, and it's a big reason why the entertainment industry is the way that it is. Yep. I mean, no more needs to be said. This guy should probably sue Rolling Stone for defaming him.
I want to see more movies. What I think, oddly enough, would be more successful if they started rigidly making movies for like just make a bunch of movies for guys and watch women actually come to them, because you'll find that like if you make a bunch of action movies for guys where the guy gets to be heroic, you might honestly find that women will then flock to the movie to see the man being heroic. Because that's a biological response.
Sure.
For a woman to like to see that, right? The reason that men and women love James Bond is because men imagine that they could be James Bond and women imagine they could be saved by James Bond. This isn't rocket science.
I guess the issue here is that when women's spaces get invaded by men, they don't put up a fight. And you can't expect the same response from men when their spaces are invaded by women. Yeah. Because they're more likely to speak up and assert themselves and say something about how ridiculous this is.
Disco Jensen for $20 says, where did it go there? Kathleen Kennedy did no less than 5 self-inserts in film and shows. The strong woman shtick literally killed the franchise. It's circling the drain, not even being supported by the people it panders to the most. Well, that's an ongoing theme within this stuff, is that oddly enough, the people that they pander to the hardest don't want to spend the money on it the way that the people who once loved it did. There's a reason why when you go to these middle-aged guys' rooms, the people who love this stuff, and they've got shelves upon shelves of toys, or figures, and you know what I mean? Like they support it on another level in a way that a lot of other people don't. The idea that likes and retweets from Yas Queen Slay is going to equate to money is silly, and you should be courting the audience that's willing to pay for your merch. But they're not doing that.
Yeah.
And I feel bad. Like I always say, I feel worse for Star Wars fans than just about any demographic of fans that have been kind of abused by these companies, because it does seem to be never ending and it seems to be malicious.
Yeah, I think that these people just need to be sat in front of South Park Panderverse and forced to watch it with their eyes pried open until they get the message.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.